rest your head, 'cause tomorrow will rise. Light the streets with a fire burning in our eyes. If it be your will, would you ride? Oh, that's a wrong. 'Cause everyone I know is singing sad country songs. Oh. All right, so today we're going to the Dickens Parlour Theatre in Millville, Delaware. If you're not particularly familiar with the zip code of Millville, Delaware, it's right near Bethany Beach. I first met Rich Block, a lawyer from Washington, D.C., who had owned property in Bethany Beach for many years with his wife, who 5 years ago decided to start a really cool sort of Victorian-style theater named after Charles Dickens, of course. And Rich is, in addition to being a lawyer, one of the most accomplished magicians, you know, in that genre. While we've been focusing on historic theaters in this series, this one, while new, has got a style to it that's really a throwback, and it's also giving a room and a venue for artists who necessarily aren't on the main circuit of, you know, actors and musicians, and in this case it's magicians. We're going to be interviewing Harry Anderson, the actor that played the judge on Night Court, one of the funny shows that I watched when I was a young boy, and probably the inspiration for me wearing all the funny hats that I do. They're doing a David Mamet play in coastal Delaware, which, you know, just to speak that sentence, is sort of an anomaly. So you have the anomaly of this cool little theater in the middle of a coastal resort town, and then you have a seasoned actor like Harry Anderson coming down to perform a David Mamet play in that very venue. So I think it's a really interesting take on why the arts matter and why theaters, you know, like this exist and are created. Because, you know, somebody like Rich Block didn't have to open up a theater. It would probably been more profitable if he opened it up somewhere else. But he chose here because he saw that it didn't exist here. And he wanted to give a venue for magicians and for actors and for theater things. So that's why we're going to the Dickens Parlour Theatre today, and I think you're really going to dig it. She's my sweet, finished woman, in my hair like a poetry. And now I see my sweet, finished woman, light up through the streets of a gay patty. She said a voodoo bouquet, I get wild. Oh, means baby, come on home with me.
In the middle of the opening night show that I was doing, and of course getting uproars and great applause from all of my friends, the power went out. The place just turned black, and I heard Cheryl, our manager, running across the parking lot because the fuses were still back in the parlor. So I just assured everyone that they could just remain calm, and pass their wallets to the aisle, and sure enough, the power was restored, and we finished the show uneventfully. For you, over the course of your career, the importance of small theaters like this one here in Millville, Delaware, the Dickens Parlour Theatre, you know, small little places where people can come and consume art.
Well, it's a very, very enjoyable thing to play a theater like this. It's intimate, and it's also sweetly low risk. You know, no one's committing it to video. You have to be there. The folks that are there feel that they're experiencing something special, especially if you have a certain level notoriety or celebrity, they're very glad to be in the same room with you. They give you a lot of props going in, and I'm a magician by trade, and magic always works better in a little more intimate setting.
So tell me a little bit briefly about this play that you're performing with Harry at the Dickens Parlour Theatre.
Oleana is a two-person play by David Mamet about a professor and a student, and it's about power dynamics, miscommunication, and sexual politics.
Do you find that in other cities that you go to or other towns that you go to throughout the country that small theaters and then the arts in general are really struggling to survive?
Well, yeah, but they've always been struggling. I mean, there's always been, the guy who made the buggy whips when Henry Ford came along. Yes, live theater, I suppose, has seen better days, but I am gladly not a part of the demise. This is a perfect room for me now, and I'm going to go out very happy. I got to play the street when it was a relatively straight place to be, and I got to be on television when there were 3 channels, and I got to own a nightclub in the French Quarter before Katrina, and I got to play Vegas when the mob still owned the place. So I must be a jinx, I guess, because when I'm done with it, it all goes to hell.
So my grandparents started a private club in Hollywood called the Magic Castle, which is pretty much the world's leading private club for magicians, and it's right in the middle of Hollywood, and that was pretty much the mecca of magic in the 30s.
The choice of decor was made in part with an eye toward the Magic Castle in Hollywood, which is one of the great institutions in the world today. It's a large, beautiful mansion that's been decorated primarily in the same Victorian tradition as ours. And so, because I perform out there and have for the last 30 years or so, I had a great feeling of reverence for it and was delighted to be able to build a kind of a mini replica.
Right. Do you find that the work that you're doing now in small theaters is just as gratifying or even more gratifying than something that is much more high profile, like being on a network TV show?
Oh, it's very different in its way. There's nothing like it. I'm doing a dramatic piece here that I never would have been offered on television. We're doing a David Mamet, no less. Mm-hmm. I never would have been offered something like that. It fleshes out it fills in so many pieces in my personal psychic jigsaw puzzle to be able to do this. It's a great opportunity. It's a benefit for Rich and his theater. It just works for everyone.
This has been a real long-held dream of mine, even when I didn't realize it. I love my law practice, but I also have always loved doing magic and performing, and for the last 20 years or so, I've done a lot of work on cruise ships, a lot of travel, all of which has been wonderful. It's great fun. But there came a point where I said to Sue, my wife, I wonder if there isn't some way that we could do something where the people came to us, kind of like the Branson, Missouri experiment. This property was for sale at the time, and so we bought the land. So I got a buddy of mine from Washington to come down and join me. He's a real fearless contractor and knows what he's doing. So the two of us just started ripping that place apart and redoing it. And the more we did it, the neater it became. I mean, it was all of a sudden, it wasn't just a little platform. And I bought some seats off eBay out of a high school auditorium. And one day I was sitting in the seats, just taking a break, and Joe, my friend, was putting up the proscenium over what was then a real stage, and I actually got chills. I said, this is actually becoming a theater, and people are going to make entrances and exits, and there's going to be a little magic happening in here having nothing to do with magicians.
Well, a place like this was born to struggle. You know, Rich didn't come in. He came into this perhaps not affluent, but he had to make his money in other ways through the law and all. And he chose to, at this point in his life, invest in experience and experiences, and that's all a theater is a place for stories and experiences.
As somebody who does this for a living and does it all over the country, do you feel that when you're up on stage, can you quantify it with less people in the audience? Do you feel that there's less of a connection between you, the performer, and they, the audience?
You mean nowadays versus... Yes. Well, I actually have a counter theory. I think that because people spend so much time on their phones and on their computers and seeing things secondhand, that the value of first-hand theatrical experience is actually increasing in people's perception. And I've definitely noticed it with magic, because as an art form, magic is one of the only things that just doesn't translate anywhere near half as well on YouTube or whatever else. You have to see it with your own eyes. He did it right in front of me with his own hands. And when people talk about that with each other, that's becoming a more rare, more valuable, more fascinating experience. And I also think there's a general sort of re-enchantment of culture in the air in general. People want things, magic, theater, things that are fantasy related. So I've noticed definitely the opposite. I don't think it's getting less interesting or less connection. I think it's getting more.
The future of the arts in Millville or anywhere else is as unsteady as the fiddler on the roof, and it is everywhere in the world, and it's why we depend so heavily on goodwill from the community support, as does every theater. Everything in theater is based on risk. The actor risks the audience's approval or lack of that. The theater owner looks at the seats and says they need to be full. The audience is giving up a night of sure thing on TV, if you will, to come and see something they've never heard about and have no idea how it's going to turn out. So when you ask, what's the future? Who knows?
Have you figured out why it is that you do the art that you do?
I figure art is a good name for a dog, but I've done it for the money and the girls. And it's worked out.